Welcome to 4.0 to Pro, the pickleball podcast that focuses on a single shot, tip, or strategy to improve your pickleball game with every single pocket-sized episode. Our goal is to make you better on the court every time you hear our voices.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of 4.0 to Pro, your pocket-sized pickleball podcast, where we teach you a single shot or strategy every single episode. I'm Michael O'Neill here in a bit of an apocalyptic Long Beach, California, joined by my friend Mircea Murariu in Boca Raton, Florida. Hello, sir.
Hello, my friend, and I just want to say I've been thinking about you and praying for you and everyone else in your area. Just so much tragedy and heartbreak to see all those fires ruin so many people's homes. I have some friends that are senior pro players that have lost homes and their family homes, and just wishing everyone in California safety and health and praying for recovery.
Thanks, man. I saw this map today on Instagram of the population of LA versus the population of different states in the United States. And LA has more population than almost every state in the union. It's like, imagine your entire state burning in a very compact spot. I'm about 45 minutes south of where all the massive fires are happening, but our air quality is toxic.
Yeah, it's affecting you regardless.
Yeah, I mean, every window and every door in my house is closed, and just trying to stay inside as much as possible. If not, you got to go outside with a mask on, like an N95 or something.
Puts everything in perspective for everyone. What's important: safety, home, family, health.
Yes. A quick bit of housekeeping. We are still working on the dates and location of our live clinics. If you are interested in those live clinics, you can email me at picklehelp.com. Please, if you do email either 40 to pro, which is all spelled out on Gmail, or picklehelp.com, please include the city that you are hailing from, because it helps us determine where we are going to do these clinics. So not just your email address, but your city as well. We are focused right now on venues that may have an indoor capability, because who knows about the rain? God knows we could use some rain right now in California. The first clinic will probably be in Florida, and we're looking at an indoor space right now. We will have updates on that as soon as possible. Mircea. Now, I don't know in my 4-ish years of playing pickleball if any shot has evolved in terms of its usage more than the drive. It is a shot that used to be kind of a joke when I started in 2020. You used to get made fun of a little bit if you were hitting like a third shot drive. Mm-hmm. And then yesterday, I just watched Ben Johns brothers at the Masters, and I don't know that he hit a third shot drop. It felt like every single third was a drive. So I thought we should revisit the drive as a formidable pickleball shot here in 2025.
Yeah, I was definitely with you in late 2019 when I started playing, and having a squash and tennis background. The third shot drive was a beautiful thing that I was enamored with, and it took me a while to be able to dial in the drops, and now we're kind of back to the pendulum has swung, so we're back into the third shot drives, and that's going to be our topic today.
Well, we need to make sure that people are doing it correctly and doing it when they're supposed to be doing it, and then talk about maybe some of the controversial times that people are doing it, but why we do a drive in general. And we mostly see these on the third shot. You've served, they've returned it. Very often you're seeing a drive now at every level of pickleball. I would say that on the earlier side, the 3.5, 4.0 world, many of those drives go into the net or they go long. And there's a number of different reasons why that happens that we're going to get into. We want to really set up an easier fifth shot. And if you hit a drive to someone who's standing at the net, they volley it back, chances are that volley's not going to go all the way to the baseline. Sometimes it does, but very often it ends up being in the middle of the transition zone, which gives you a much shorter fifth shot, which is obviously ideal.
Exactly. You really want to have the mentality that you're not trying to hit a winner, you're trying to set up the next shot. So one good way to think about it is use your third shot drive to set up an easier fifth shot. So when you have that mentality, it helps set the table. One of the other reasons that you want to think about driving is if you're trying to set up a shake and bake. So you, as the driver, you're the shaker. And then your partner, who ideally is crashing in front of you, that's the baker. What you want to do is drive a ball to a specific spot to try to get a pop-up for your partner, or to have your partner poach and put pressure on the other team to put a ball away. And there's not too many things more satisfying than getting a good drive and setting up your partner You're giving them the assist where they get a pop-up and they put it away.
Super helpful if you have two dynamic, athletic people on the team. And we've talked in the past about limiting that, where if you have someone who's an amazing driver, great, but it's the other person you need to be worried about. It's the one that's hunting for that pop-up, who's super dynamic and athletic and can put the ball away. Sometimes it's easier to drive to them. We also want to keep a player honest and limit their poaching, especially you see this in mixed a lot, where if you're driving to, let's say, the female on the court and the guy's poaching and taking that ball out of the air and really making you pay for it, it's really nice to be able to drive the ball in a spot that he's vacating and keeping him honest and not allowing him to really take over the center of the court.
Especially if you have someone with a long wingspan, someone that's very agile and is putting pressure on those drops. And like you said, it most often happens in mixed, where the female player will be returning on the right and the male is on the left up at the kitchen. And so the male likes to poach that third shot drop. So I'll often tell my partner, especially at the beginning of the game, let's just drive down his line. Let's try to keep him honest. And that actually works really well. And they tend not to poach as much the rest of the game. And I'll always say, hey, listen, don't worry about it. Even if we lose the point, it will set us up for later down the road, so then that player won't be poaching as much. So I just call it in the budget or the cost of doing business.
It's actually the same concept of when you see an NFL team throw the ball deep at the beginning of the game, because it sets up for play action passes, meaning it's like it totally loosens them up and allows them to get a little more breathing room. When do we drive? Well, I've already mentioned that it's most often seen on the third shot. And you and I argued a little bit about this. We see guys like Kwang Duong driving on their fifth mid-court, and it's becoming a little more prevalent, but it would not be something that I would rely on. I think it really depends on what paddle you're using, what your racket sports background is. This kid happens to have a pretty wicked drive that dips really hard, especially when he's using a proton paddle, apparently, instead of his normal Selkirk. I don't know if you guys saw that in the middle of the tournament. He switched out to a proton paddle, and he's a Selkirk-sponsored athlete. I have no idea what the fallout is on that, but I'm sure it wasn't great. The third is typically when we drive the ball, and not the fifth, the seventh, or the ninth, which are most often the ones that you see end up in the fence behind the players or in the net themselves.
Again, you're trying to advance the kitchen. So the harder you hit the ball, the more quickly it comes back. So when you're driving the fifth and seventh and ninth, it doesn't offer you as much of an opportunity for you and your partner to advance. That's usually when you want to soften it up. Now, there are exceptions, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but a third shot drive is more optimal than a drop is if someone hits a really hard, deep return. So you're kind of pushed back a little bit, and it's very difficult to hit a precise third shot drop. Another scenario is when it's very windy out. So when there's a lot of variability with the ball, it's really windy. And for example, right now in South Florida, it's pretty windy. So you want to drive through the wind to try to basically get an easier fifth.
Are you more of a third shot driver or a third shot dropper? And has that evolved over the last couple of years?
It's definitely evolved. Generally, it depends on who I'm playing against. In mixed, I'm more of a third shot driver, and I've become more of a third shot dropper in certain contexts. There are some players that really love third shot drives. They really thrive on those. They much prefer a ball right at their waist or their chest rather than their feet where they have to bend down. So it really depends on the skill set of your opponents, and you need to figure that out and evaluate that during the course of the match. One
thing I love when someone returns a serve, and especially a lot of tennis guys, will do a pretty wicked slice or underspin on the ball. And this just happened the other day. I was playing and my partner was having problems with it. I said, no, man, he's giving you all the topspin you need for a drive. You can hit the snot out of that ball with some topspin because he's giving you so much backspin. When that thing bounces, it gives you so much spin to hit through the ball. Watch that ball dip and submarine as you whip it back to them. To me, I love it. I love when I get a super slicey return in that regard.
Yep. And that's one of the other scenarios we're going to talk about, was that when there's a lot of spin on the return, it's often difficult, or it will increase your margin for error for hitting a precise third shot drop. Again, it depends on your skill set also. When your opponents have difficulty handling drives, that is often a good time to keep driving. if it's something is working, you keep doing that. There are certain types of players I find that have difficulty putting a lot of pressure or hitting very hard volleys off a drive to their body. And one scenario that is very tall people. They have a lot of reach, yet when you hit them in the body, they have a little bit more difficulty countering with pace. And that also kind of leads me into your opponent's skill set. There are some players that have a lot of reach, and when you drop, they really shorten the kitchen for you and put a lot of pressure on your third shot drops, or they have very aggressive topspin type shots on both the backhand and the forehand. Good example is Anna Lee. Anna Lee's a perfect example that she can really put a lot of pressure on both her backhand and her forehand. Even if you hit a good drop, she can still put a lot of pressure as you're coming up.
So we have a spot. You've been to Los Cab with me, Mircea, and there's buildings on one side of the court, and then the other side is basically in this funnel. We get a really weird breeze or wind that comes in, and if you happen to be on one particular side of the court and on the left side, so now I've got to drop directly into this diagonal wind that's coming in, it is really difficult to drop from that spot. I will, by default, drive in that spot because I miss my drops there. I just miss them all the time. So I think if you're having an off day and you're just not getting the drops the way you want, I always suggest try taking some of the spin off and see if you can just hit the thing flat and in, which is a very Colin Johns approach. Or in this scenario, I've got a wind going against me. Well, there's no way I'm going to beat the wind. So I might as well hit it, just like you said at the very beginning, on a very windy day. Well, that could be contextual based on literally where you are on the court and what court you are on, whether you decide to drive or drop on that particular shot.
Exactly. So one of the other things we mentioned earlier is about the fifth, seventh, etc. So are some scenarios where you might want to consider rarely driving a fifth or seventh shot, etc. One of the things might be if you see an opening. For example, if someone has moved to the middle to poach and they're expecting a drop, so you might want to drive another one behind them. Another might be where they are sitting very heavy on one wing. For example, there are certain players that you will see just are sitting 100% backhand, and so you might want to surprise them with a drive to the forehand. Another might be like you have a weakness. Like if someone just can't handle backhand counters off drives, well, maybe you want to drive several shots to that same wing. Another scenario is when someone hits a really deep hard volley as a counter, and it's the analogy to a deep hard return. It might be hard to hit a very precise drop in that scenario. So I might want to drive another one at their body or towards the weaker wing to try to get an easier, maybe seventh or ninth shot.
One scenario, Mircea, that I do is sometimes you play against a big target. I play against a guy who's like 6'4" and 250 pounds. He's a big dude. And that's a lot of human to move out of the way. So sometimes it looks like he's just wearing a giant target in the middle of his chest. And I can do a mid-transition zone drive that he has trouble with because he's got to move himself out of the way. What I will say, you can't rely on it because once you get him once or twice, they start keying in on it and they'll see as you're setting up for that drive, they'll start olaying out of the way and you'll probably hit it 5 feet deep. But if you have an accurate shot and you've got a big human on the other side of the court with you who maybe doesn't move as quickly as they would like to, it can be a scenario for a little body baggery.
So when I'm playing, especially in men's, but often in mixed as well, I'll say, hey, listen, I'm driving here. I'm driving low to Joe's backhand or Susie's backhand. And that really helps tremendously, especially in the shake and bake scenario, where your partner knows generally where you're going to drive. And so they don't really have to look back and watch you hit the ball. They can actually crash and look straight ahead and anticipate the pop-up, or even if it's not a pop-up, if someone counters your drive, they're more prepared for it. So their anticipation is better.
Every morning as I'm on my way to the pickleball court, I do two things. I get my caffeine, because you need your caffeine, and I have my protein shake. And in my protein shake, I throw a scoop of AG1. My one scoop of AG1 gets me a multivitamin, vitamin C, super greens, probiotic, and vitamin B complex, which gives me tons of energy. It's the easiest way for me to eat healthy on the run. The cool thing is it doesn't even have to be in a protein shake. It tastes fantastic on its own. Just mix it with a bit of filtered water, gulp it down, and you have all of the exact same benefits. So this new year, try AG1 for yourself. It's the perfect time to start a new healthy habit, and that's why we are partnering with AG1. AG1 is offering new subscribers a free $76 gift when you sign up. You'll get a welcome kit, a bottle of D3K2, and 5 free travel packs in your first box. So make sure you check out drinkag1.com/402p to get this offer. That's drinkag1, the number one.com/402p to start your new year on a healthier note. One thing that I think is worth noting is that, especially if you came from tennis, the notion is you're trying to hit a winner. Like that's what happens in tennis, where you're trying to rip the ball and it's an untouchable shot. That's typically not the case in pickleball. In pickleball, you're trying to set up the next shot. I am always 100% guilty, especially when I'm on the left-hand side and I get a wide return where I can step backwards and really step into my forehand and then just look down that alley of the line and just rip it. And I mean, in my defense, I will connect on a number of those. But I miss a few as well. But it is an incredibly satisfying shot to turn and fire a winner right there. But in general, we're trying to aim for a weaker wing or a very, like you said, very specific spot. I also like to target the person who's coming in. So they've returned the ball and they may not be in their stable base. They may not have split step yet. And I do like targeting them. Very often we talk about the hybrid drive or the drip, as you like to put it, which is that kind of drive drop. It's not quite 100%. It's maybe a 50% shot, 60% shot that dips and gets very low as they're in the middle of the transition zone. I think that can fall under the category of drives because you are effectively hitting a drive ball. You're just not hitting it super hard.
Yeah, and it's especially effective against the player that's moving or coming in, and also in the context where they're switching or unwinding a stack. Yeah. That is really helpful, and you can set that up like we've talked about with the serve. So if you angle the serve out wide, when you're serving on the left and there's a returner on the left, if say, for example, that returner is a lefty and they're on the left, so you know that they're going to have to try to switch. So I always try to use that as a way to spread them out, if you will, and allow myself and my partner the opportunity for that third shot drive or drip like we talked about.
I like also driving it down the middle for a number of different reasons. You got a low net, especially early on in the match, and double especially if they are relatively new partners and or rec play, and maybe they don't communicate very well. You can often kick a field goal. You can fire it right between them. Someone thinks the other person's going to take it. And then, unfortunately, you don't get 3 points, but you do get one or you get a side out.
I anticipate where people are trying to poach. Like we talked about in one of the other episodes, your job when you're up at the kitchen line and your partners are turning, it's try to help them get up or to put some pressure on your opponents. A lot of players, they tend to lean towards that middle. So I target where their furthest reach would be if they're pinching middle, and that space between there and the partner's backhand, assuming they're both righty. A lot of times that person will try to reach and poach, and it's just a little bit too far out of their reach, and you can generate an error. And that's kind of what I call the quote middle.
This is one of those chess match shots, I think, because when I'm on the, let's say, the right side and my partner is returning, I will absolutely do this. I will shift to middle, make sure that there's a presence there so that they can't kick a field goal. They can't just rip it right back at us. Very often, they will start noticing that midway through the first game, and they'll start driving down the line just to keep me honest. This is exactly the opposite of what we just talked about.
Yeah, that's definitely another target. Behind the poaching player to keep them honest, another option is the weaker wing. So someone has a backhand that they can't punch it at all, or you know that you're always going to get a nice, easier fifth or seventh. Another great spot is body, where you jam them up, especially when they're moving forward. The biggest thing is to pick a target, communicate with your partner so you're both on the same page where generally you're trying to target the ball, and then adjust. As players are adjusting, say you're targeting a body and the person's sliding more to the left. So you just adjust where you're hitting the ball. So the biggest thing is communicate, adjust.
I had a drill session a couple of years ago, Mircea, that I recorded. and I had a ball machine and I was whacking a bunch of forehand drives. And I remember when I reviewed the footage, I went, whoa, I'm not hitting it the way I think I'm hitting it. And I ended up changing my swing path. This was really kind of weird. Imagine if you're waiting for the serve, right? So you're in the return and you keep your paddle all the way down, like by your, let's say your right knee, if you will, and you get this forehand. If all you did is swung your paddle from there and had this nice low to high swing path, and you could even keep your arm relatively straight, as long as you were focusing on getting around the back of the ball, a little bit underneath and around the side to get some topspin, you'd watch this ball miraculously go exactly where you wanted it to. And I wanted to point this out before we dug really deep into the how here. We're going to suggest a couple of things, and you're going to see some of the pros do it differently. The part that really matters is the contact point of the ball, where they're actually hitting it, and what their follow through looks like. Because very often we'll say something like, you don't need a giant backswing. You don't need to roundhouse the swing like a tennis player would. But you do see some people like Anna Bright take a full roundhouse shot. Maybe that comes from tennis, but if you don't come from tennis, you don't have to emulate that. That's not the important part of the stroke. The important part of the stroke is when she contacts the ball very low, she's around the back, she's around the side of it, and she's getting that nice topspin / side spin, that kind of 5 to 11 versus 6 to 12 if you're looking at a clock. And the ball's going where she wants it to. So don't get too crazy with watching how all the pros do it. Just focus on that swing path, low to high, getting around the back and the side of the ball, and it will miraculously go where you expect it to.
Yeah, I mean, you have to start off focusing on your footwork because you need to be in the right spot. I often remind people when we're training, focus on hitting the ball in the sweet spot, not just hitting the ball, not just being in the right spot. Focus on hitting the ball in the sweet spot of your paddle. And that really helps kind of reconnect the brain with the paddle and the ball. So just feel where your sweet spot is and make sure that your footwork is allowing you to get in that position, because that's really step one. Then the biggest thing is take pace off. And I got to tell you, full disclosure, like I was the king of just crushing the ball as hard as I could with that third shot drive. And when it went in, it was great. The problem is that I was at 4 or 5 out of 10. I hit 4 or 5 great shots, and then 5 are hitting the fence or hitting the net. And I only improved my consistency both with the third shot drive and with winning more often when I took the pace off. So you were saying about the hybrid, the 60%. I would say that the majority of your drives should be roughly at about 60% because again, you're trying to set up the next one. So when you take some pace off, it improves your consistency. You work on the accuracy, which is much more important than your pace. You want to target the opponent's knees or at least make them hit from low to high. So it's more important to get that drive to dip using some topspin with the apex of the ball, the trajectory on your side of the net, and then have that go over the net and then dip down.
If you're standing sideways and your paddle is prepped, it's down, your body weight is centered, you've obviously split step, you are ready to hit that ball. At that point, the swing is halfway done. You really only have to swing it then from low to high to make that shot. One suggestion I will give you guys that weirdly I got in racquetball and it was a complete game changer for me. There was no net involved, obviously, but try to be prepped for the shot before the ball crosses the plane of the net. So when you see that there's a drive coming at you, get to your spot and get your paddle prepped and down while you're running. Get ready for it. So you just have to plant and swing through. Immediately get your paddle down and ready to hit the ball. And what that'll do is, if anything, you'll be early on it. You'd rather be early than late, meaning you don't want the thing to cramp into your body. You'd rather have it out too far in front and have to adjust that way. If you focus on, and you might not do it every time, but if you know, I've got a potential drive coming, get your body ready, shuffle to the ball if you can, then plant and take the shot. But get the paddle back and prepped. And I say back, I kind of mean down and back. Yep. But get the paddle prepped as soon as humanly possible. And it's very easy to see with backhand drives, Mircea. When someone like Connor Garnett is running for a backhand, his paddle is already down and his arms are dead straight and he's ready to hit that stroke. He's not running with the paddle like really high and then doing in one swing the entire motion. he's taking care of half the motion while he's moving to the ball. And I think it's weirdly easier to see this sometimes with a backhand because you see people really reaching out with arms straight, making that lever, but you don't always see it on the forehand side. But if you think about that, if you think about your arms as a lever and really starting to eliminate variable, eliminate wrist, eliminate elbow, and you and I talked about this because I was getting wristy with my other paddle. Yeah. I have since corrected that. And on the days that I remind myself, you don't get too wristy, my drives are like incredible, especially with this new carbon paddle that we can't talk about yet. But it's amazing where the prep can make all the difference. And it comes back to that thing we talk about all the time, which is footwork.
One of the biggest things that I want people to remember is that the net is undefeated.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything that's a new or novel concept, yet it's incredible how often I see a team get a side out and one person whacks a drive into the net, and guess what the next person does? You're on a 2. The next person whacks a ball twice as hard into the exact same net. This is one of my biggest pet peeves, if you will, is that you really need to make the ball if you were partner misses a third shot, drive or drop, doesn't matter, because you lose so much momentum by not even getting into the point at all by missing those. So if your partner misses a serve or misses that third shot, your job is to make the ball, make your opponents play the ball. And this is especially true at critical times, 8-all, 9-all. And I see it over and over and over again at the pro game, 5-5, 4-0, whatever. Like when it's a critical time, the teams that make more balls are the ones that win more games and matches.
Before I started this podcast, I started makeemhit.com, which is where you can get the merch, by the way, for this particular show. MakeEmhit, makeemhit.com. And that came from my singles play. I'd be playing singles and I'd whack it into the net and go, dude, make them hit the ball. Like, why am I giving them the point? Why am I not at least giving them the opportunity to hit the ball long or hit the net or hit it wide? Why am I giving them the point? Make them hit. So that's why the hats say meh, M-E-H, because it looks kind of funny. It's like just M-E-H and it's got a pickleball on it. And that stands for make them hit. That's the entire concept of that. And I have to remind myself of that sometimes because sometimes you get feeling yourself, especially with drives. You can start ripping them around. But like you say, you start missing a few. Or even worse, your partner keeps missing them where there's no adjustment. And you just go, dude, just take 30% off of that shot that you're hitting 1 foot above the ground into the net. It's not even like it's close. It's not like you're clipping tape. It is a foot from the ground. You're hitting it 2 feet down right now, bro. Take it down a little bit. Get under the ball. Like please make them hit the ball once.
I challenge people, go out the next rec games you play, tell your partner where you're driving, communicate that with your partner between points. I'm driving to Joe's backhand. I'm driving to Fred's backhand. I'm driving middle. Communicate with your partner. And then when it gets tight, just make the balls. Make the balls and see what happens. I guarantee you your winning percentage will creep up and you'll notice that you are winning more and more 11-9 games, 12-10 games, etc.
My closing statement, Mircea, would be while you're warming up, hit ground strokes. It's something that most people don't do for whatever reason. They hit a bunch of dinks, they'll hit a few drops and go, okay, I'm ready. And it's like, you do that and then your third shot is a drive every single time and you haven't hit a single drive while you're warming up. So just hit a few groundies, get your body rolling, get your blood flowing. Very often, if I have very limited time to warm up, I start with groundies. I start with a drive because that really gets my entire body involved. It's like a lot more of an athletic shot than a dink is. And I'll work my way up to a softer game. But I know that much of my game is predicated on getting that third shot drive to be nailed. And if I start missing it, it's simply because I didn't warm it up enough.
I like it.
Well, folks, I hope you drive your life away today. Get out there, hit some drives. Very, very easy thing to drill on a wall. Very easy thing to drill with a ball machine. Very easy thing to drill with a partner. I 100% recommend filming yourself so you have at least some idea of what your mechanics look like. And there's obviously a million YouTube videos that'll teach you to visualize the proper mechanics on that kind of stuff. Mircea, thank you. Please go enjoy your pickleball today.
Absolutely. Thank you, my friend. And you stay safe out there, and I hope you get on the court soon.
Much appreciated. Folks, you've now just listened to another episode of 4.0 to Pro. As always, at 4.0_2_pro on Instagram, and also BrainsDoc, DOC, on the gram is how you can connect with Mircea. You guys are awesome. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to 4.0 to Pro. For more tips, find us on Instagram at 4.0 to Pro. If you have a pickleball question, submit it at picklehelp.com. Now, get out there and dominate. But don't forget to have fun.